Kensington Palace has refused to release the original portrait taken of the Princess of Wales as her children. Piers Morgan was saying it should be brought out. She announced earlier yesterday, didn't she? I edited the family image. I do photoshopping. It's my fault. But people will not let this go. Piers Morgan last night saying you've got to release the original photograph so we all know.
Well, it was the first official picture released of the princess since she underwent planned abdominal surgery back in January.
Royal biographer Tom Bauer joins us now. Tom, very good morning to you. Help me out, because I'm getting a bit hacked off with this, excuse the pun. Nicola and Piers are on a mission. They're right, absolutely. So we have a situation where she obviously goes to have an operation. The palace say, and I quote, "We won't be hearing or seeing any of her till after Easter." Everybody's fine with that. Suddenly this photo comes out on Mother's Day, apparently put out because there's lots of conspiracy theorists online. It's a complete no-no. It's photoshopped to hell. Agencies pull it, and now the conspiracy theorists are emboldened and the words are even stronger. Give us your view, please, TB.
Well, it's most unfortunate. I think that she's very ill. She has had a very serious operation, and the palace handled it appallingly. When they said they wouldn't hear from her until after Easter, they should have said quite firmly that, and regularly said, we're not telling you any more. But unfortunately, she bowed to the pressure of all these social media ghouls and troublemakers and speculators who made her life very difficult. And instead of being protected by the palace and her husband, and told just sit back, don't worry, she thought she'd do the best thing possible, which was to release a lovely photograph. Well, it is a lovely photograph, and a couple of changes to it are really quite irrelevant. But, you know, we're in a feeding frenzy, and it's rather unfortunate for her because she doesn't deserve it.
And, Tom, what do you think this is going to do in terms of the relationship between Kensington Palace and the Royal Rota, and also readers of newspapers, our viewers, who, you know, when they are told this is a photograph, I agree with you that it's not necessarily the most important thing. At the end of the day, it's just a Mother's Day photo. But when you are told by the royal family that this is what it is, and you find out that it's not, that is going to ruin trust between the British public and the monarchy.
Well, I don't think it'll ruin trust. I think it's damaging. I think it's embarrassing. But in the end, it'll blow over. I think Kate is hugely popular. She is the future of the monarchy in this country. She is recovering from a very serious operation and is still ill. This is the problem. And the real thing to change are her advisors in Kensington Palace and the King's advisors in Buckingham Palace, who are not protecting her and not advising her and making sure she doesn't make these sort of mistakes in her recovery. And that is the whole problem with the monarchy at the moment. It is in crisis, there's no doubt, with all these illnesses and Andrew and Carrie and all the rest of it. But there's no wise man or wise woman in Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace just steering the royal family out of the pitfalls and dangers.
And, Tom, do you think that there's a difference in the way that we treat Kate and William and Harry and Meghan on issues of this kind of nature? You know, Harry and Meghan have certainly said certain things that the press have disagreed with. We now know that Catherine and William have put out a photograph that and have essentially lied about the veracity of that photograph. Do you think there is a difference between the way we treat two couples?
I think it's terrible to compare the two. William and Kate are unbelievably loyal. They represent the best of Britain. Harry and Meghan, as you well know, and we disagree on that probably, are really the pits. I mean, they have just said the most terrible things about Britain and the royal family, and it's ridiculous, in my view, to compare the two. Look, it's most unfortunate. William wants to create a different monarchy. He sees himself as very different to his father, but he hasn't got the wise advice how to steer it carefully. He took the photograph. He was involved in all this. He should have protected Kate from this sort of upset and sensation. But I don't really think that it ruins our trust in the royal family. It just means that we know that Kate did something rather foolish.
Tom, I tend to agree with you. I understand what Nick's saying. I think there's two things there. I agree with you about the comms. I think the optics of it are rubbish, and I think it questions, again, you know, household staff. And there was a new private secretary, I think they've just had. They haven't had a private secretary for ages. They've just had a new private secretary. No doubt pressure will come there. But I also think I'm frustrated because I'm a royalist, and I'll tell you why I'm frustrated, OK? if somebody says you ain't going to hear from her until after Easter, you talked about bowing down to social media trolls. I've been taught the best thing you can do is ignore that, and it's absolutely true. They didn't need to bow down. It's like it's an own goal. It's like it's highlighted something that didn't need to be highlighted. You know, the king is presumably ill and the thing's slimmed down, the Queen has died, and there are people, right, questioning. There are young people, Tom, you know this, questioning, whether the royal family is relevant. And I just feel that by bowing to those social media people or even trying to be, modern or, social media, big own goal. And it frustrates me because they hadn't made any own goals. Do you agree with me?
I do, absolutely, but I wouldn't blame Kate.
No.
I mean, she's recovering. I just blame the grey men and women in their employ who are meant to give them proper advice and protect them from the pressure, and they completely failed.
Well, this is an interesting point, Tom Bauer, because you and Nicola Thorp are absolutely the same as, because she said to me this morning, I think Kate's been hung out to dry here by the suits. I think she's been rolled out to make an apology, and that in it, didn't you? You said that.
Yeah. At the centre of this is a woman who has been poorly, and ultimately she should be left alone. Now, I don't know how much she personally reads social media, but perhaps the people around her have felt as though they needed to give in and put out this photograph. And it just hasn't worked out very well for her at all. But, Tom, what do you think the next step is? Do you think that these conspiracy theories will just continue until she returns back at Easter? Or do you think they should actually put out the original version of the photograph to kind of calm all of the speculation?
Well, I think putting out the original photograph will do no harm at all. I'd be surprised if she's back at Easter. I think that her illness is probably going to continue for some time. I just wish her well, because if you're a monarchist, she is the best thing that has happened to the monarchy since Diana, before that exploded. So we've got to protect her, and that's the problem. They don't understand how one silly mistake can cause all this furore. But my view is that by the weekend it'll all be over. I don't think we should feed anymore. We should just leave her alone and let her recover.
I agree. Listen, you got two hats on this morning, my friends. You're earning your money. Royal commentator, but you also read a biography about a great man, Boris Johnson. Today there are rumours that Dishy Rishi is so on the ropes that relationships between his camp and Boris's have thawed, and Boris is going to be wheeled out of the red wall seats that were so important in the victory in 2019, because the Conservatives allegedly, Tom, if you listen and watch every single poll, are facing Armageddon, really, and Boris Johnson being brought back to campaign. I can't get over the hypocrisy of Sunak, can you?
Well, I think it's desperation by Sunak and self-interest by Boris. He is desperate to come back. He wants to resume his occupancy of Downing Street. I do think that I've always thought that he'll look for a seat, but I think he's very vulnerable. I think the moment he puts his head above the parapet, he'll be shot down with all the accusations which forced him out of Parliament in the first place. And I think that he hasn't learnt his lesson yet. He still doesn't acknowledge why he lost power, why he was driven from Downing Street. And until he does that, I don't think he'll be able to talk convincingly to the electorate. He can't all the time say, I'm sorry. He's actually got to say how he's changed. And that's the problem with Boris. He really is completely self-consumed. And I fancy that the people around him now are not telling him he's got to actually come up with a proposal and a plan and a statement which justifies his return to politics. But I've no doubt he'd grab it and thinks that he can be the saviour. And if he is the saviour, he'll take the spoils.
Well, thank you
Brilliant,
so much
Tom.
for joining us, Tom Bauer, royal biographer and Boris Johnson biographer.